I want to know if there's anything in the Quran or our studies and research that tells us that Palestine will be free someday. What does Allah say about freeing Palestine and when it will end?
Thank you for your question. The Quran and the Sunnah speak about the eventual prevailing of justice on earth. One of the things that parallels the descent of Jesus, peace be upon him, of Isa alayhi salam, is not just the return to monotheism, but justice prevails on earth to the point that a predator would not attack its prey, that a child would be able to play with a python and it would not bite them, that the wolves would not attack the sheep. So there's an overall tranquility that overcomes the earth. And of course, the descent of Jesus, peace be upon him, is in Ard al-Sham, is in the area of Sham, which is Syria, Palestine, Jordan, and Lebanon. And his final place in the initial phase of his descent is Al-Aqsa, is the area of Jerusalem. It's very interesting that Ard al-Sham, the area of Greater Syria, Palestine, Jordan, and Lebanon, shows up multiple times in the Quran and the Sunnah as a place of great virtue, and in the process of being a place of great virtue, it's a place of great tribulation. The angels have their wings spread over the people of Asham. In many ways, that is similar to when they had their wings over Asya, the wife of the Pharaoh, the wife of Fir'aun. And Asya was being tortured, but the angels had their wings spread above her, and she saw her place in paradise. And so the presence of the angels does not mean that there isn't going to be tribulation. In fact, in many ways, the tribulation is equivalent to virtue. Just as on an individual level, Allah tests those whom He loves. And so in our individual capacity, the reward is in accordance with the tribulation. A specific timeline to the freedom of Palestine is not given to us. But there is a certainty that we find within the unfolding of the events that lead up to the final hour that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, spoke about. What I would say, and this is extremely important for us as we may despair in the moment, is that this is not the first time. This is not the first time that that place, that holy place, has been filled with corruption and bloodshed and seemingly was unrescuable. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made things change. In fact, when Salahuddin al-Ayyubi rahimahullah entered into Jerusalem, after the Crusaders had wreaked havoc on Jerusalem and its people, the adhan had not been called for almost an entire century in that place. Al-Aqsa was completely desecrated. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought it back. And when Salahuddin entered into it, he entered in an exemplary fashion to say that we are not our enemies are not our teachers. He did not wreak corruption. In fact, he set a legendary example of mercy. If you lived 40 years into Al-Aqsa, you have to keep in mind here, that means that there were people that were born and that died on this earth, and adhan was not called in Al-Aqsa a single time in their lives. And if you're talking about the despair in it ever being freed, if you lived in that time and you went from being 1 to 80 and a Muslim had not set foot in Al-Aqsa that entire time, you probably thought this was not salvageable. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought the light from the darkness, as He always does. And so I'd caution for us as we sit back to say the odds are stacked against us, to say that I don't see a way out. It's often when we don't see a way out and when the odds seem insurmountable, that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings about victory to show you that He was in charge the entire time. And that's why we say Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. When people say it's over, we say Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. We believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we believe in His capability. and we believe in His overwhelming power, and we believe that change will come. The last thing I'll say in this regard, it's not helpful to assign dates and years or to think always in terms of the end of times. This might not be the end of times. I know it feels that way, but every generation that has ever walked the face of the earth thought that it was the end of times. Since the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, until now, they thought there were enough signs around them that this was the end of times. So it might not be the end of times, but it certainly is evil. And that's sufficient cause for us to exert whatever we can to try to free it and to see its liberation and to uphold the sanctity of its people, knowing that at the end of the day, we're all on Allah's timeline. So will it be free? Yes. Will Al-Aqsa be free? Yes. Will the place of Ash-Sham, the land of prophets and martyrs, be free? Yes. Will we live to see it? We don't know. Are we called to it? Yes. And so we do what we can, and at the same time we put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.